Hey there. So I am going to be going through some of the questions on the ballot for the election on November 8th here in Maryland. There's a lot of times when you get to the time of actually answering the questions and getting to the election and standing in line, and then we get to the point where we have to check the box on yes or no on these random things and have no idea how to answer. So, although I already did early voting, I know a lot of people are going to be voting on November 8th tomorrow. And it's important. And it's important because there is so many things happening in the state. And there's a lot of things happening in the city. And so if you know anything about Maryland, you know anything about Baltimore City, it's that the success of Baltimore really does equal the success of Maryland. And with some of the folks on the ballot, as far as governor and all that good stuff, there's just a lot popping off. So going into your little cubicle with that little piece of paper with all those questions, I want you to go in informed. And so I decided to write down my handy dandy notes and go through some of these questions so that you can at least walk in the door informed and not be checking random boxes, because I know y'all do that because I've done that many a times. And so I see y'all on Instagram, on YouTube as well. So folks who miss can catch the replay. But we're gonna just dive right in. So this isn't as cool and fun and sexy as all the other videos, but it is super duper 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 important. Literally starting with question number one. So remember, this is after you go through the questions of who are you electing for, like governor, who are you electing for comptroller, like those types of pieces. You should do your own research on individual people. This is specifically about the questions, the more quantitative, like the question. You got to read the question. A lot of questions don't make sense when you read them. So hopefully this makes it a little bit more easy. Say what up in the chat, right? Don't have me just out here chatting with myself. Say what's up. I see y'all joining there. Hey guys. Okay. So once you get through who's who on the ballot, question, you'll get into question numbers. Those are for the state. So if you see Q question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, those are consistent across the entire state. Teresa, thanks for this. You are so welcome. So let's go through the state questions really quick first. So this is applicable for everybody in the state of Maryland. You're going to see these same questions. So the first question, question 1, is renaming the courts. So here's the thing. Current names are super confusing. So the lower court is called the Court of Special Appeals, and the highest court in the state is called the Court of Appeals. Right, I'm getting confused just reading it. So you have the Court of Special Appeals and then the Court of Appeals. Nobody understands what's what, which one makes sense, whatever. And so this question is basically saying, should they change the name so that the lower court in the state is called the Appellate Court of Maryland, or the highest court in the state being the Supreme Court of Maryland? So if you vote yes to that, that means yes, it's confusing, change it. We ain't got time, right? So to change it from the Court of Special Appeals and the Court of Appeals to Appellate Court of Maryland and Supreme Court of Maryland. Clearly, Supreme Court means highest. That's question 1. Question 2 is about whether or not the people who are being elected to state positions, so that's like senator, state senator, or state delegate. This question basically is saying, should they need to live in the district that they'll be representing for 6 months prior to the election? So currently, the requirement is that someone has resided in the district. So there's no like clear and specific requirements. And so voting yes to question 2 or voting for question 2 means that you want whoever is being elected to state senator or a state delegate has lived in the district that they'll be representing for at least 6 months. Got it? Okay, so question 1, court names, are they confusing or nah? Should we change it? Question 2, doesn't matter if a state senate or a delegate has lived in the district for a certain time period prior to the election. So question 2 would require them, if you say, if it's voted for or yes, that a state senator or a state delegate needs to live in that district that they be representing for at least 6 months prior to the election. And that would not start until 2024. So it doesn't count for anyone running now, but it would count for anyone running again in 2024, that they would need to live in the district for at least 6 months prior to the election. Cool? First 2 questions down, right? Question 3, and this is literally how they're named in the ballot. Question 1, question 2, question 3. Question 3 is about trials. It's about trials. So you can request a trial currently, having a jury trial. Currently, you can get that if you are suing someone for at least $15,000, so $15,000 or more. What question 3 is about is $15K to $25K. So that means that you can't request a jury trial, unless you're suing someone for more than $25,000, right? So those of you who getting tapped every 5 minutes to be on the jury in Baltimore City, right? It might cut down on that, for example. Okay, so question 3 is about what's the minimum amount you need to sue somebody before you can request a trial, right? Those of you who are on YouTube, go ahead, hit the like button, thumbs up. You know, I don't go live all the time, so I don't have the etiquette to ask you to do it. So make sure you hit the thumbs up. Those on Instagram, go ahead and tap the hearts or something. Share this with somebody else in the state of Maryland or Baltimore City, especially if you have no clue what to expect on tomorrow for the election. Okay, cool. Question 4, again, these are for Maryland, the Maryland state questions. Question 4 is about legalizing marijuana. Okay, question 4 is about legalizing marijuana. So currently, it's a possession of marijuana is a misdemeanor. You can get up to 6 months. Yes, for this, or voting for question 4 and legalizing marijuana would legalize up to a 1.5 ounces for anyone who's over 21. And it would also expunge past convictions, and people who are in jail for possession only would get released January 1st. So definitely a big deal. It also gives folks the option to grow 2 plants in their own backyard if they so please. So question 4 is about legalizing marijuana. So this is it's a big deal for a lot of people, not only the folks who like to blaze, but also when it comes to who's in jail and for what. Like, does it make sense for people to be locked up on marijuana if I can do a Zoom meeting with a doctor and go up the street and get it with my little marijuana card? So legalizing marijuana is question 4 for the entire state of Maryland, which would legalize up to 1.5 ounces, 1.5 ounces of marijuana. Okay. All right. Question 5. Question 5 is about whether or not Howard County should have an orphans court. Orphans court, for those who don't know, orphans court is the court that basically manages when someone dies, whether they have a will or not, they're going to kind of manage through the process. And then the circuit court deals with probate issues. So what this would do for Howard County is get rid of their orphans court, get rid of that court that handles wills, and just move all that stuff into circuit court. So it basically consolidates who handles what in Howard County when it comes to managing estates. Okay, so if you didn't know what orphans court was, that's what it is. It is a court. It's a place where they manage estates of people with or without a will. and circuit court. Typically in other counties would do orphans court and circuit court. Okay, this would consolidate and everything be handled under circuit court. Cool. I see somebody said no to question 5. Look, I ain't telling you how to vote. I'm just telling you what it says. So if you say yes, right, it means you're going to consolidate. If you say no, you want to keep those two things separate. You want to keep orphans court and circuit court separate when it comes to managing wills and managing probate, which honestly is how most of the state is. They have orphans court and circuit court. So having one court handle all of it actually is not common in the state of Maryland. Do with that information what you will. All right. Those are the Maryland state questions. There's questions that go across the state. Everybody in the state of Maryland will see the entire thing. And so we have a Black woman who will be judge of orphans court if 5 fails. Okay, good to know. So those are the 5 questions for the state of Maryland. Now let's get into the fun stuff of Baltimore City. I'm not trying to drag this out because it's not like the coolest conversation, but it's super duper important. So I want us to be informed because I also want us to show up because all of this stuff is important for one reason or the other. All right. So in Baltimore City, once you get into city stuff, the questions are numbered by letter. So the state is numbered from 1 to 5. And then the city, you have A, B, C, D, all the way to J. Right? Cool. Now, question A, near and dear to my heart. We're going to start at the top with some real estate stuff. So question A is specifically about giving the mayor and city council the ability to borrow $14 million. And that $14 million would go towards funding of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is funding affordable housing, right? But there is an RFP that comes out twice a year, I believe, where folks can submit a proposal to get access to funding to do projects in the city. So we have, in full transparency, we've been part of proposals to get money through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We're actually one of the first people to. We got access to $750 million. Sorry, not $750 million, although I would take it. So let me know if anybody wins the Powerball and wants to write me that check. But it was $750,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to create permanently affordable housing, which has been really a great opportunity to do that. So in the same neighborhoods where we're doing market rate housing, we also are doing permanently affordable housing in partnership with a community land trust in the city. So question A, yes, the question A gives the city the right and ability to borrow $14 million to go towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The original ask for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to the city was $20 million a year. So this gives them the right to borrow $14 million. Question B is giving the city and the mayor the right to borrow $38 million in order to buy land so that they could develop schools and athletic facilities. So a lot of schools, a good number of schools across the city have been either knocked down, they're being rebuilt. There's a lot of moving and shaking within the school system. Always remember, right? You want to watch what people are doing, not necessarily what they're saying. And so we're seeing a lot of things happening, at least visually, when it comes to schools and in some areas across the city. And so this question B says that the city can borrow $38 million to buy land for schools and athletic facilities and to develop that land. So I'm sure that has something to do with all of the demolition, consolidation, and development of schools in the city. Okay. Question C. Question C is for the city to borrow $36 million for economic development programs. There's actually another question about development programs. So one of the things that the city's been talking a lot about and focus a lot about is economic and job development, those types of programs. How do we make sure that people can get access to the jobs that they need so they can thrive rather than try to survive, which really facilitates an environment of people trying to hustle and get it how they can, and that usually results in issues with crime. So this $36 million would go towards economic development programs in question C. Question D is for $72 million for infrastructure work. So if we're talking real estate, which I always am, this gives the city the right to do infrastructure work on land in areas that they own, as well as land in areas owned by the Enoch Pratt libraries. So there is some development planned when it comes to libraries in the city. Again, how to make sure people can thrive rather than survive. Access to resources becomes a big part of that. And so they're asking for $72 million to be able to borrow $72 million to make that happen. So the first four questions are about the city borrowing money to be able to do things. So question A was for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is funding new construction, redevelopment, and apartment buildings for affordable housing in the city. Question B is for schools, athletic facilities, places like that to be able to buy land to build and develop those. Question C is about economic development programs. And question D is about public infrastructure. Okay, cool. So question E, now we get into like some of the, different stuff. So question E is whether or not the city should privatize, so make private all of the electric wires, phone wires, the wires that run the street lights, all those types of things. Should the city make them private? So should the city sell it? Right? Should it be a city service owned by the city, run by the city, or should they sell it to another entity who then takes care of it and runs it? So currently, Comcast and Verizon will pay Baltimore City so that they can provide their service, right? They're basically renting the wires from the city. So a couple years ago in like 2015, BGE tried to buy it, buy the underground wires and all that infrastructure for $100 million. That didn't go through. Previous mayors and city council have blocked it a few different times. And so this is coming up again as a question. Should Baltimore City privatize the wires, the electric, all those things underground? Now, understand privatization means that the city then can't do things as easily, like provide access, like managing things like cost, all those types of things. So privatization means it's private. Like, you out of here. Like, don't ask me nothing. For the most part, right? You would think that whoever buys it would be a good partner, but it does relinquish some control of the city. Okay, someone said no to privatization that could potentially lead to price hikes in the future. Better let the city run it. Right. Exactly. So that's what that question is about. Should the city continue to run and hold accountable and all that kind of stuff? Whomever is renting those wires from them, Comcast and Verizon currently, being able to work with and through BGE, being a partner with them, or should they get the money, sell it, and allow whatever entity to decide how much things cost and who has access to it and all those types of things? Now, they borrowing a whole lot of money, so they're gonna have to get money from somewhere. But I personally, Mayor Brandon Scott has put aside a good amount of money to create opportunities across the city for anyone to get access to Wi-Fi. those types of opportunities would be a lot more difficult if the city didn't have control of the infrastructure underground for all those wires. Just throwing it out there, you know? Because I'm not necessarily trying to tell you how to vote. I just want you to be informed about what you're voting on. Okay. So answering yes to question E about the privatization means no, if that makes sense. So if you say yes, you're saying yes, you should not sell the phone lines and all that kind of stuff, right? So yes means you're not going to sell. No means you're going to sell the property. I mean, sell the infrastructure stuff and give private access. Okay. Question F is about having additional funding for folks when it comes to rewards in crime. So we already have the Metro Crime Stoppers. They have like a $200,000 budget each year, and they use that budget to pay people who come up and be like, "Hey, I heard that such and such did X, Y, and Z." Right? And if it leads to a conviction and arrest, then that person gets their reward. Now, if the reward is skimpy and you live around the way, right, is the risk worth the reward? And you have situations where victims or victims' families are coming up with money. They got GoFundMe's and all that kind of stuff to try to raise money for a reward. So what question F does is creates an additional fund so that the city can put up more money for rewards, right? So part of the proposal or what they have been talking about is that if you are helping to solve a crime that is gun related, it's a homicide with a gun, then they'd have a reward of more than $6,000 or $4,000 if a homicide done other ways, right? So really, it's an additional fund above and beyond Metro Crime Stoppers to provide rewards for people who speak up. Okay. So if you say yes to question H, if you say yes to question F about the crime fund, then that means you're saying yes to more money for tips. But just remember that it doesn't necessarily specify how much money. The mayor gets to decide how much money and if he's going to allocate funding towards this. But this question F says, should we have a fund that goes above and beyond the Metro Crime Stoppers? Now, what some people might say is, why can't we just increase how much Metro Crime Stoppers has access to? Why do we need a whole additional fund? All those types of questions are worth asking. But yes means, yes, I want this new fund to be able to provide additional money towards tips. Okay. I love that you're doing this important work. You're welcome. You're welcome. Hopefully it's helpful. I want folks to show up and I want you to be informed, right? Because it is very important. All right. So question G, quick recap. Actually, let's go back. We went through all the state questions. Question A in the city is about borrowing $14 million for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Question B is about borrowing $38 million to buy land for schools and athletic facilities. Question C is $36 million towards economic development programs, being able to borrow that amount of money. Question D is borrowing $72 million for public infrastructure on Baltimore City land and Enoch Pratt Library land. Question E is privatization of electrical wires, Wi-Fi, street lights, all the wires that are underground, privatizing that, basically selling that from the city to a private entity. BGE tried to buy it in 2015 for $100 million, but it got blocked. And question F is about having an additional fund for money and rewards for people who speak up on crime, right? Tip line. All right. Moving right along. Y'all still with me? Is this fun? Give me some Give me some feedback, because I know I know it's not the most popping conversation, but it's super duper 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 important. It's so important. There's nothing worse than sitting there trying to go through your paperwork and you have no idea what you're voting for and just feel like, what the heck is this? Because I know most of us do not have time to do all this research. All right. So question G. Question G is for a permanent fund for workforce force development. So this is about creating like apprenticeship programs in city schools and community colleges. Okay, so this is, again, right? How do we transition folks from just trying to survive and positioning them to thrive? And so this gives folks, would create a fund to have more apprenticeship programs in city schools and community colleges. Um, this was something proposed by City Council President Nick Mosby, I believe. And so a yes to question G means yes to creating a fund. Just know that this doesn't specify how much goes into the fund. City Council and the mayor would still decide when to fund it and by how much. But question G means that you would say yes to question G means that you are for creating a fund to have workforce development. And the thought behind it is like apprenticeship programs in city schools and community colleges. Okay. Good to see us focusing on local politics, good information, layman's terms. Thank you. I'm trying to make sure it's easier to understand, because sometimes the wording on this is wild. Specifically in question H. So question H is, it basically says, ask you if you are for and against or voting yes or no on having a Baltimore City Police Department with a commissioner. And most people read that like, we already have a police department. Like, what are we talking about? Why would we create another police department, right? And so here's what you need to know and understand about question H. Question H, you have to understand the history behind question H. So Baltimore City, the police department in Baltimore City is not run by the city. It's not run by Baltimore City. So since around 1860, the Baltimore City Police Department has been run by the state of Maryland. And so what question H is really asking is, should Baltimore City Police Department be run by Baltimore City? That's what it's asking. So City Hall does not have authority over Baltimore City Police Department currently. The mayor can create plans and hire the commissioner, but cannot change policy for the police department. This question is probably one of the most important ones on the ballot, in my personal opinion. In my personal opinion, it's probably one of the most important questions on the ballot. I mean, there's shows and movies and all these types of things about the Baltimore City Police Department. There's a lot of heat that has been created as a result of things that have happened in and through the police department. We have the disconnect between like the state's attorney's office and the police department after the Freddie Gray uprisings. It's just a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so what question H is asking is, should Baltimore City Police Department be run by Baltimore City, right? Should the mayor and city council have authority locally over the police department that is, charged with keeping the city safe? Okay. So a yes to question H means that you are saying yes to Baltimore City Police Department being run locally by the city starting in January 1st. So it would be like a quick turnaround. But a yes to question H means that Baltimore City would no longer be run by the state of Maryland, but gets moved to Baltimore City. There's so much history behind why Baltimore City Police Department is run in the state. A lot of it has, to be completely honest, a foundation in just straight up racism. I can't even try to turn it something else. But yes, the question 8 means that the Baltimore Police Department would be run by the city starting in January 1st versus being run by the state of Maryland as it has been since 1860. 1860. Yeah, absolutely. The wording in these questions can be really deceiving. You're right. Because you don't know if you're responding like yes or no, because sometimes a yes means no, you don't want something to happen, or no means yes, you want something to happen. So you definitely want to read well. So a yes in question H means yes, you want Baltimore City Police Department run by the city rather than the state. Okay. Yeah, your comment is exactly why I'm like trying to find what yes means for each of these questions, because you get there and you start feeling like you're taking the SATs. It's giving, I have not a clue. It's giving I'm finna skip this question. so so my goal is to make it a little bit easier, hopefully. All right, so that was question H. Question I is about the board that oversees the um, a board that oversees the inspector general. So this is about who is a member of the board that oversees the Baltimore City Inspector General. What this board does is investigates fraud, waste, and abuse in City Hall. Okay. This board will investigate fraud, waste, and abuse in City Hall by overseeing the Baltimore City Inspector General. So the current board is full of elected officials and people that they pick, right? And so the thought is, well, if I'm overseeing fraud and abuse in City Hall, but the people who work in City Hall and their friends are on the board, can they really be investigating me? Like, how does this work? Right? That's kind of the question. And so voting yes to question I means that you're saying, yes, I would rather have a board with 11 residents who are randomly chosen based on nominations across city council. So not city council would nominate people within their district, and then 11 people out of everyone who was nominated would randomly be chosen. And then there'd also be, I believe, a CPA and someone else, like 2 professionals on the board as well. Okay. So question I, voting yes means yes, I want how this board is constructed to change. Yes, I want to change from having elected officials and people they select to having 11 randomly chosen residents and, a couple professionals in the field to investigate fraud, waste, and abuse in City Hall with the Inspector General. Okay. Cool. All right. Question J. Question J is about third-party vendor payments in the city. So as you could imagine, right, the city pays a lot of people, right? There's going to be a lot of contractors, a lot of vendors who are doing a lot of things across the city. And so there is a group of people, employees of the city, who are managing, over 10,000 vendor invoices a month. And so what question J is really about is whether the group that's handling payments, the accounts payable for vendor payments, should move from the finance department to the comptroller's department. That's basically what that is, right? So the thought is, if they move that team, that there could be better oversight, payments can get out more efficiently, and then we don't have issues with lapse payment because payments can get out so slow. I did kind of hear through the grapevine, I didn't have it confirmed yet, but I heard through the grapevine that There's potential that the issue with contamination in the water, in the water that happened a couple of weeks ago, where there was E. coli in the water in South Baltimore and kind of West Baltimore, that was a result of a vendor not being paid to put the chemicals in the water that's needed to kill those types of issues. So can't confirm or deny if that's true. I'm pretty sure I saw that in the newspaper, but yeah. So a yes to question J means yes, we should move that team to the comptroller's office so that the comptroller can better manage and make sure that the people who are supposed to be getting paid are getting paid more timely, so that we're not having issues with lapse of work, people stopping work, all that kind of stuff, impacting the viability of people's businesses because they're relying on Baltimore City paying them on time, that kind of stuff. So question J is about whether or not that team that handles vendor payments, third-party vendor payments for the city, are under the finance department or the comptroller's department. Okay. Question K is another kind of hot topic. Question K is about term limits for city council and the mayor. And so what question K would do is limit terms for those officials to 2 terms. So they could do 8 years within a 12-year period, and no more than that. So this would basically put the kibosh on lifetime elected officials in city council, right? People who've been on city council forever and a day. It would limit their ability to be on city council or mayor to 2 terms, no more than that. Okay. So the concerns or conversation around this is, continuity, right? If we're changing elected officials all the time, can we actually get things done? If it takes longer than 8 years to do, you don't get a chance to get from idea to proposal to approved and voted on to execution in that 8-year period. Is that possible? The other side is sitting on the council don't mean that you can sit back and chill forever. How do we light a fire under people to get stuff done if you can just be elected forever and a day? What about the people who just sit back and never have anyone run against them and just kind of get voted into the position forever but never quite get much done? That's the conversation, the concern that people have with not having term limits. So question K is specifically about having a 2-term limit for city council and the mayor so that no one can be elected for more than 8 out of a 12-year period. Okay. So yes on question K means yes, I want to limit terms for elected officials. Okay. This question was not proposed by city council or the mayor, as most of these other ones were. This question was actually created and funded by a PAC to get put onto the ballot. I will also add that city council, within like the last week or two, just voted to make the minimum to get a pension if you're on city council 8 years, which I don't know, something tells me that's not a coincidence, knowing that this question is on the ballot. So they just voted and approved to have to make it so if you've been on city council, you've been in those positions for at least 8 years, you're eligible for a pension. They changed that. It used to be 12 years. They dropped it down to 8. And then this question K is saying that people can do a maximum of 8 years in a 12-year period, 2 terms. Again, not a coincidence, but I also get what they were trying to say as well, because if this question passes, but you have to serve 12 years in order to get a pension, no one would ever get a pension, right? Also remember, question K doesn't count until 2024. So it only matters for people who are elected started in 2024. So question K, yes, means you are limiting terms. So city council and mayors can only serve for 8 out of a 12-year period. Yeah, sometimes elected officials just sit there and collect a check or have their own businesses thrive because they have the connections. Right. And I think the longer someone's in city council, you build all those relationships, and it does create this environment where there could be like, what do they say on like the news? They talk about like cronyism, right? You got your friends and your friends of friends who you support. So I get that as well. I kind of went back and forth about it before actually voting myself, um but a yes on question K means that you are for limiting the terms for city council and mayor. Okay. So, with that, those are the questions. So, we went through the questions that are for the entire state. So, questions 1 through 5 for the entire state of Maryland, talking about names of courts. Do senators and delegates need to live in the district prior to being elected for that district? How much you need to sue somebody for in order to request a jury trial? Talks about legalizing marijuana in the state of Maryland for question 4. Question 5 was about wills and estates and probate and who is managing that process. So those are questions that you'll see all across the state of Maryland, regardless of if you're in Baltimore City or not. And we also went through the questions in Baltimore City, right? Talking about different things that the city wanted to borrow money for, whether that is for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, so it's residential properties for the most part, as well as development for schools, having economic development programs, and doing infrastructure. We also talked about who is overseeing City Hall with fraud, waste, and abuse, right? Who should be on the board that's looking into that stuff and helping to hold people accountable? Should it be elected officials and the people they pick, or people who are randomly chosen based on nominations from city council? We talked about all kinds of stuff, right? Should we privatize wires underneath the ground, right? Should we sell that for revenue, or should Baltimore City keep ownership of the phone lines and electric lines and all that kind of stuff themselves? Tip lines for crime. Can we solve more crime if we have more money for rewards? My goal with this time, although, quick and again, not as kind of fun and pumped up as it usually is, this stuff is super important. There's so much going on in the city and the state. There's tons of development. We're going to have the change of the guard in Annapolis with the new governor after the election tomorrow. And all of this stuff matters. Like, the things that are happening today in Baltimore, things that have been worked on and planned, 3, 5 years ago, 10 years ago in some areas and neighborhoods. And we have to know and understand that some of these questions on here, we're going to see the rubber hit the road as a result of how people vote tomorrow over the next, 3 to 5 years. And it's a lot. It's a lot. We have neighborhoods in Baltimore that are in the list of top gentrifying neighborhoods across the country. We have a disparity between the haves and have-nots for sure in Baltimore. And we have so many people who are finding out that the things that they see and heard on the news isn't quite what it is when you're on the ground in Baltimore, which is super exciting. We have all this fun stuff going on. We're excited about things that we're doing and working on. We're excited about the conversations that are being had, and participating in the election process is important. It's important. And anyone who tells you differently has not been in the rooms with the people who are making these decisions. Like, it absolutely matters. And if you're not voting, there's other people who will. And what they want is what's going to get pushed through. There's a lot of big money in Baltimore that knows how to move things through the ranks. And at the end of the day, we just need to stay informed and vote your priorities, right? Vote your priorities. I'm personally, I don't give a doggone about Democrat versus Republican. I care about policies and results. And I recommend that you spend some time to learn what's on the ballot, who's on the ballot, and vote your priorities. Vote on what makes the most sense to you. I was trying very hard not to share my personal opinions or how I was voting on this, because how I feel and what I think matters not nearly as much is how you think and how you feel. So at the end of the day, it's just about being informed and doing something intentional with that information, so that you um that you have a say in what's going on around you. And that's critically important. And I think more of us probably think the same than we think. And if we get out there and participate, we can really shift what's happening. So tomorrow, November 8th, is election day. If you're joining late or just joining in, I would definitely suggest going back to the beginning and just hearing it out. I went through all the questions that are on the ballot. Didn't talk about the specific people who are on the ballot. You can definitely do your research there. We do have an interview with Wes Moore, who is running for governor, on our YouTube channel that you can check out, that we did a couple months ago. But yeah, happy voting. Okay. Have a great night. Bye. Shout out to YouTube for not letting me end the live. End stream. Please end it. Well, I guess I'm doing a Q&A until let me end it. Oh gosh. Please end. Oh man. That is awkward. I can't get off of YouTube. Let's try again. Try this way. There we go. Bye.